former colleague slash manager at RBC. Jocelyn joined the chat today, and one of the things Jocelyn taught me as my manager was telling, you have to know how to define your brand. What do you want people to perceive you as you start a new role? What do you aspire to be? So she kind of coached me on how to build my brand. Of course, I need it, right? Looking at Tenny. Oftentimes I'll do presentations and I'll just go off script. They're like, this girl needs to stop. But anyways, so Jocelyn really did help me, define my brand and project the type of person that I really wanted to be within the organization. And really honored to have Jocelyn in the chat. She's a woman of few words, but she's very, 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 one of the smartest people that I know, very, very deep. So after the conversation, do connect. Ada is nodding her head, yes. Do connect with Jocelyn. She's an expert Excel guru. She's a change management guru. She's, if you want someone that has worked in the startup environment, Jocelyn is your person. So she looks very humble, but she has years and years of work experience. So leverage that. But today, our conversation is going to be around building your brand. And I also wanted Jocelyn to speak on Excel 101 another day. So I'll just put this out there so that you all keep her accountable. Come back and teach us Excel.
She's committing me because I don't want to commit.
All right. Yes. So with that being said, I'll pass it over to you, Jocelyn.
Thank you, Tenny. So thank you all for joining. I'm hoping we kind of treat it to be a little bit like what it feels like, a bunch of friends sitting in a living room and having a conversation, a frank conversation to help each other grow in our careers in the way that makes most sense. So thank you again for joining. I'm really happy to be, as much as I like the advice all the time, I am very happy to be a part of the chat series, especially during the month of March, where I know the focus that she's really set for March was to empower women. And that is strongly aligned with the purpose that I hold for myself, which is really around driving a positive impact, as well as empowering others. So a little bit about my sort of background. Throughout my career, I've been really fortunate to work and learn from some really great leaders, and also to pay it forward with like my mentoring and coaching, whether it is students, colleagues new to a career, colleagues at different stages of their career, and help sort of like share what I've learned and what I've failed at and what I've kind of recovered from in terms of what my career looks like and the shape that it's taken. As Tenny mentioned, I've been around a little bit. So I have about 20 years of experience in the financial industry. Most recently, I am the Director Executive Compensation at RBC, but my experience does range across human resources, communication, organization effectiveness, as well as agile, to name a few things. In that time, I had the opportunity to develop strategies, communications, execute plans to support business transformations, cultures, as well as grow and develop talent. But at the base of it, regardless of the role that I've held, my career has really centered around three things: understanding people, understanding priorities, and then translating those two things into a strategy that will deliver desired results. Right? Tongue twister there. So that's kind of me in a nutshell in terms of what I feel my career has been and what defines me. As Tenny mentioned, we're going to be talking about brand. So I'm hoping at the end of this chat this evening, you walk away with a good understanding of why it's important to elevate your introductions. More so, this is what I really feel strongly about, how to differentiate what you do versus who you are when you talk about your personal brand. And then also share throughout tips on things to consider as you craft what your narrative looks like and how you deliver it in that manner. So I'm going to be really honest with you. Building your personal brand, if you haven't already done it, it's not fun. It's painful. Like, it can be painful. It is a journey, because at the end of the day, it requires you to be willing to be vulnerable, not only with yourself. It requires a lot of self-reflection. It requires you to actually have a plan, and even if it's like a 2-year or 5-year plan, but understand like what is the goal that you're trying to achieve and reach for. It also requires you to give yourself a break and like release any judgment. So I think it's a given within this group. This is a judgment-free zone, but it also means we're kinder to others than we are to ourselves. it really means apply that same thought process to yourself. Don't worry about what's right or wrong. It's what is and what do you want it to be that really should matter. And then on that same vein, like, what is that candid conversation you need to have with yourself? Because it's not always about the trend of today of what are those hot skills that I should be talking about, but it's really at the core, who are you and what aligns with what that looks like? Because if you're only reaching for what the trends are, it's not going to be authentic. You're not going to feel it's authentic, and people won't feel that as well. So on that note, and I'm hoping this to be more like us chatting together versus me just chatting at you, because that's no fun. So Tenny kind of touched on it a little bit, but I'd love to hear from you guys. Like, when you think of a brand, like your personal brand, what comes to mind?
So I've never really thought about that, because so I understand my personality, but I've been working in the public sector for a while, and so it's a bit more discreet than working in like private organizations. And so, in terms of my brand, it's basically parts of my personality that I'm able to contribute to my community, basically, in a nutshell. That's how I understand it, because I don't think we can survive on our own. Teams just work, and you're better able to move forward in a team than, by yourself. So that's how I understand it to be. Yeah.
Thanks, Melissa. So the definition I pulled off the handy dandy internet was how you present yourself, your skills, your experience, and your career goals to other professionals. It's what differentiates you from the rest of the pack. So it's really like it's your statement. And if you think about brand, sometimes I find it helps to kind of think broader. So we're going to do that for a little bit of an exercise. Let's think about brand from a company perspective. Are there companies that come to mind for you that have really strong brands? Whether it's a good brand or a bad brand, it's still a brand. What companies, are there any that come to mind for you? I can kind of shoot a couple out to get the juice. And I'm really not going to talk about any F5s, so don't worry about that. But one that I could kind of easily pick on is Coca-Cola, right? Their brand tagline is "Taste the Feeling." A lot of the commercials that they do, the feelings that they try to invoke with everyone, is really about creating connection with family and friends. It's about happiness. It's about joy. What other brands come to mind for the group in terms of brands that come to mind in general when you think of a strong brand or a memorable brand?
Nike.
Mm-hmm. And what about that brand stands out for you?
It's just like it's engraved in their slogan, like Nike, just do it. It's, it's kind of, if you were to not know anything about sportswear or anything like that, like you will definitely know Nike. So I don't know why, but that's something that comes to mind for me.
Just looking at the chat. So I see Mercedes-Benz being mentioned. Pioneers in luxury vehicles. Yep, McDonald's for sure. I'm loving it. Subway, Eat Fresh, healthy foods. Yeah, exactly. So now that we have some of these brands in mind, so we talked about what differentiates you. So you have brands that sell in the same product line, the same industry. So, I talked about Coke. On the flip side, you have Pepsi. Same product, really the value proposition on it is it's a soft drink, right? It is what it is. But why associate with Coke versus Pepsi? And I know they even had this whole rivalry, they like to drive around, are you a Coke person, are you Pepsi? I'm Pepsi, by the way, but that's just preference. Yeah, look at it. Like, I got some reactions there, like, sorry, I used to be Coke and then I switched. But no, but think about the brand. So what I said was Coke was taste the feeling. It was about family friendly, happiness, connection. Pepsi, if you think of how they've evolved their brand and what they've leaned into over the years, again, same product, but it's I think their tagline, which I will agree is not the greatest, is "That's what I like." But it's really around smartness, youthfulness, fun. They try to get endorsements with people that are sort of like the trendier folks, whereas Coca-Cola tends to be the every person, the people like the rest of the people. Some of you mentioned Apple, which really, when I think Apple, I think iPhone. So iPhone's tagline is "Think different, but not too different." It's power to the people through technology. It's about lifestyle. It's about innovation. I would even extend it to say it's about trends. It's sort of the cooler thing to have versus Android, right? Android is be together, not the same. Again, kind of a weird tagline, but that is what it is. Theirs tends to be about honesty and humility. So neither is right or wrong. It's just they're different, and they speak to different people for different reasons, and they spark with you, and they are memorable for different reasons. Any others that come to mind that you guys like to share before we just move to the next? Not people.
Tesla.
People's next. Tesla, for sure. Electric, more environmentally conscious.
Yeah, innovation.
Exactly. So let's switch gears for a second. So Tenny kind of got us there for a second. Let's think about people. Think about well-known personalities. Who comes to mind? Like, what's their brand? It could be a celebrity. It could be a CEO. It could be a leader of some sort.
Steve Jobs, his turtleneck. Black turtleneck.
Steve Jobs with his turtleneck, for sure.
And innovation.
Yeah.
Definitely. For a lot of things, Apple is Steve Jobs, right? Like the two are treated synonymous. But definitely innovation, convenience, empowering, and fun, I think also kind of fall with him. Any others?
I'm going to say it's been a while, but I'm going to mention like a rapper that I've always Chance the Rapper. It's only because so he raps, but the way he portrays himself in terms of giving back to his community, that's a brand that I admire. It separates him from the other, the normal views of rappers. Usually you think about trap music and you think about girls and hookers and all of that, but he is more into giving back to communities and uplifting person. So yeah, that's a brand that differentiates him in his industry.
I was just going to say Keanu Reeves stands to mind for actors for me recently, just for his humility.
For sure. So some other ones that I kind of jotted down, and I was trying to keep in the theme of women for Women's Day, Women's Month. And hopefully all of these folks are familiar to you. So the first I'll start with is Sheryl Sandberg. So, she was originally, I think, came to mind because she was the former Facebook COO. And then she also essentially started and has become the voice of female through leaning in. Whether all of her messages you agree with or not, but she started a movement from that perspective. So her brand has really been around not necessarily having it all, but being able to stand and sit confidently at the table with men and be an equal partner. Greta Thunberg, I don't know if you can really avoid Greta Thunberg in the last couple of years. So she's been a passionate advocate for the environment. She has become the voice of her generation when it comes to climate. She is consistent in terms of the delivery of her message, her desire, and her actually action in terms of calling out people when they're not living to sort of the standards that they've kind of put forward. That's become her brand. Everyone knows Oprah Winfrey. She's definitely someone that comes to mind when I think of a strong brand. She turned her show into a media empire. But beyond that, it wasn't just about her having a magazine and a TV show or whatnot. It was really about, at the core of it, she's looking about how do I enable others to live their best life through self-care, through wellness, through all of the people that she brings attention to. And she lives that, whether it's, you look at her magazines, you look at her Soul series, you look at the people that she tends to advocate for or endorse, they all align with this whole thought process where she shows up because it aligns with purpose. So connecting the dots, so what? So who cares? Like, what's the so what here? Why is that important? When you have a good understanding of your brand and how you want to articulate that, how you want to show up, one, it creates connection, because people like to, they gravitate to those that they want to learn from, that they admire. It highlights what you make stand out. So we talked about differentiators. Why do I want to follow you? Why do I want to listen to you? Like, what's that credibility that you're demonstrating to me? How are you different from the other person that I'd want to be part of your team or want you to be part of my team? It also establishes trust and credibility. So if someone was talking to you who never had a job and never had any experience, didn't even know what a brand was, would it make sense for them to be talking to you about brand? Probably not. It's not to say they wouldn't have a good input or things, but it's, do they now have the credibility that you're not questioning everything that they're saying to you? Can you trust what they're sharing with you? Can you trust them to show up in the way that you're hoping? So if we think about the examples that we've discussed, like whether you're an organization or you're an individual, organizations are really looking to capitalize on the brands of others via collaboration. So from a commercial perspective, when we talked through some of these examples, Nike wanted to change their brand and be seen as more politically minded. So yes, they still lean into the just do are about athletics, but then they partnered with Colin Kaepernick. Hopefully I said his name right. The NFL player who became sort of like known because he would take a knee during the national anthem, during the football games, because he was protesting and saying like Black Lives Matter. So they wanted to capitalize on that feeling, that thought process. They wanted to create that connection. The other one would be probably a little bit more obscure, but Emma Watson. So she's an actor, probably most known for Harry Potter. But if you think about how she shows up outside of her acting career, she has turned herself into a huge advocate for women, for feminism, for empowerment. And she speaks very clearly about why all of these things are important, how we need to make change. She partnered with the UN. So she is a UN advocate and she speaks on these things. So they're really trying to lean into her brand and her following to then elevate their own purpose and the alignment. So from an organization perspective, I kind of alluded to a little bit, you gravitate towards strong brands. And if you think about like whether you're looking for a job or the work that you're doing, who you want to work with, you're naturally inclined to want to work with the best. You want to work with people that share the same values with you, that are, like I would say, especially for myself, you want to work with people that are smarter than you because you can learn from them, that fill the gaps that you may not be able to fill yourself, so that forward it's stronger. So you're going to look for other people, like what are those things that differentiate them, that would bring something and enhance what's at the table. It's also that Pied Piper effect. So think about some of the top talent that you have in the companies that you worked with, or even companies you know of. There is this Pied Piper effect because companies want individuals that project or create a strong following. So if they think that these people are the top dog, it's likely that other people are going to want to work for them. They're going to follow them. They're linking into that brand, not only because of the company, but also for the opportunity to work for those leaders. Okay, so let's get to the good stuff. So how do you go from setting your brand, selling it? And really, from my perspective, it's dependent on 4 things. And we'll delve into this a little deeper, but at high level, my perspective, it takes clarity, it takes consistency, it takes confidence, and it takes intention. So from a clarity perspective, and we've kind of touched on all these, do you know what drives you? What do you stand for? What are your goals? From a consistency, at its core, showing up the same way every time, regardless of the channel, regardless of the environment, regardless of the situation. Confidence, if you don't believe it, why should anyone else? And this also talks to how you show up. Is it actually going to come through? People get distracted. Like it's sorry, like it's sad to say, but people get distracted by what they see and what they hear. So is that muddying the waters in terms of the message you're trying to deliver? And the last was like intention. What are you hoping to convey or gain? Everything has to start with purpose, whether it's the purpose of what you're trying to achieve for yourself, but also in every interaction. What are you hoping to gain in that moment? What are you hoping to grow? So from a clarity perspective, if I dive into that one, and this is like, we'll spend probably a bit of time. It's really about articulating that personal brand. What is your brand? What are those questions you need to think about and ask yourself to figure out, like, what does my brand need to even look like? So some of the common questions are, what are you known for? What are you hoping to be known for? How would you like to be remembered? What do you offer? Who are you helping? What are you focused on? What do you value? They sound like simple questions, but as you kind of felt to the intro when Tenny's like, one word to describe yourself, it's not easy. And sometimes it's not easy to settle on that one word. So what I would suggest is, one, don't overthink it. Start with a brain dump. Jot down everything. Don't take anything for granted. And I say that very heartfully because I remember speaking with a colleague where I was like, well, what do you think your brand is? And she's like, well, I don't know. I'm good at communications. Like, no. I was like, you're good at relationship management. You're calm in stressful situations. She's like, but isn't everybody? I'm like, no, they really aren't. So don't undersell and undercut those things that you take for granted as table stakes, because they aren't always table stakes for everyone. So jot down everything, every single skill that you think is important to you or that you are striving towards. Put it down. It's not necessarily at this point about refinement. It's just also think about, what do you value? Like, what are those things that you value? So for myself, it ranges from, equality, creativity, adaptability, making a positive impact, like driving value, intelligence, curiosity, like just like I can name a bunch more. And you could also, if you're also super stumped, it's also great to Google stuff and you'll find lists and you can help refine them. Sometimes it's easier to pick from lists than to try to think things from scratch. But also take stock of, what are you not strong in? So it's not always about like, what are the shiny objects and what are the things I'm great at? It's also good to know, like, what am I like kind of crappy at? So, am I self-deprecating? Do I tend to be too quiet? And it's not to say you're gonna like focus on that things, but I think you need to understand, what are those detractors that might impact how you're actually showing up? Are there certain behaviors that show up a lot more that are making it hard for you to show up in the way that you want to, and for the brand that you truly want to be known for to come through? Once you have this list, whether it's a mega list, whether it's a short list, now you want to refine it a little. So out of everything that you have on paper, what do you feel is most important? And it's not to discredit all the other things, but it's sort of like, what do I want to highlight that I think and know aligns to the purpose that I have, to the goals and aspirations that I hold true to myself? What are the job aspirations look like for me, and which skills would be the most advantageous for me when in terms of demonstrating the linkage from my brand to those things. Unique. Also consider, what does future-proofing skills look like, and do you have those? Are they things you want to attain? Because it's not only about where you are today, it could also be about where you want to go. A lot of times people are evolving their brands, and it's sort of like, I'm known for X, but I want to be known for Y. How do I get there? What are those things that are going to help me be seen and described in that way? And then once you have that like clarity of what it looks like, test it a little bit. And I don't mean don't quite go out to people yet, but test it in terms of, ask yourself, so what? So resilience and adaptability are amazing skills and amazing brands to have. But I would also argue post-pandemic, everybody has been said to be adaptable. Everybody's been said to be resilient. Is that really going to be the key thing that's going to differentiate you from others? It's a skill to have and be known for, but is it the skill you want to be known for? I remember another colleague of mine said, oh, I'm a team player. I'm reliable. I'm kind. I was like, okay, but why would I hire you? That to me is table stakes. What's the difference, right? And it sounds cruel and it sounds harsh, but I think those are the kinds of questions and tests you have to do. It's to say like, okay, if my goal is to be, I'm just going to pick on Teddy, ruler of the world one day, are these things going to show up and lead me to that? Is this going to help me be known for these? Because at the end of the day, about brand, it's how do people remember you? How are they talking about you? And if they're talking about you being like a great team player and reliable, those are great things. Don't doubt that. But that's not necessarily going to put you at the top of the list when they're considering promotions or when they're considering movements for role. If you want to be known as strategic, that's what you want to be the first thing to come out of their mouth, is that I'm a strategic thinker, critical thinker. She's great in a pinch. She knows how to get things done. And it's like a different way for people to talk about you. And also I find when people are talking about you with these sort of like these harder skills, I guess, are the ones that you would call like the more unique, they tend to describe you with more confidence as well. Right. So it's not just about the confidence you show, but it's also like the confidence and the like, not quite the right word, but the tenacity that others are showing when they're advocating for you. So next up, we need a little bit of a reality check. So there's what you think you are, and you know, you're an angel, you're amazing, you are the next best thing ever. But is that actually true? So we need to do a bit of a reality check. So what that entails, and this is going to be, honestly, sometimes it's hard. Like clarity is kind, but sometimes it hurts when you get it. Seek feedback from people that you trust that will be very honest with you. And not honest in the like, I'm going to tell you that you're kind and you're caring. No, I'm going to tell you that, hey, did you know that you maybe tell a little too many jokes at your expense? So it makes me think that you're not as good as you think you are. Do you know that, so I remember one of you were saying that people will say you're thoughtful. Okay, so you don't agree with that, but what's the gap? Why is there a gap? Why don't you believe what they're saying? Can you dig into that with them to understand, like, why are they describing you in this way? How have you shown up that makes them think that's the first thing that comes to mind, that you're a thoughtful person? And it's not, and I get it, it's hard to just go to friends and just be like, hey, what do you think my brand is? Is it this? I would suggest going with them with a blank slate, not putting words into that. You could also obviously test your brand as well once you've had it nailed down. But really, I would start with just canvas a couple of them, like people you trust. Don't go, I would say like 5 to 10 is a good range. Once you go past that, it either gets overwhelming or it gets a little bit crazy. But ask them for 3 words or short phrases that describe you. And ask people, I would say, not just your friends. Ask people you've worked with, whether it was recently, whether it was years ago. Ask people at different levels, because you want to really get a good scope of like, what is it my brand actually looks like? Does it look differently in different environments? Do I show up differently when I'm with senior individuals versus like junior peers? And if it is, and sometimes that's okay, but in other cases it's like, why? Like, what is the bias that you might be having that's impeding your ability to demonstrate your brand in the right way? The other thing is, are there common themes? Are there surprises? I know a colleague of mine, she had done an exercise like this, and she was like, oh, someone said I'm like agile, like I'm really good at agile, like I didn't think I was. So sometimes the people highlight things that you're demonstrating as a brand that you might not have thought to highlight, but it's actually a really good differentiator for you. And finally on that is, at the end of the day, whether the perception and the reality fully meet, whether you understand what that gap is the brand that you're demonstrating, is it actually in service of the goals that you're hoping to achieve? Because if it's not, then this is time to take stock, to say like, okay, well, what do I need to do differently? How do I need to show up differently? And in some cases, it might not even be that your brand is wrong. It could just be that it's getting the message across clearly, in how you show up, in how you deliver, how you talk about yourself, how you really just advocate for yourself, which is never like an easy thing.
Yeah.
So within that clarity, you know what your brand is, you have an idea, but it's like, Jocelyn, I just have a list of phrases and words. Like, what do I do with this? A good place to start, and to help cement it in your head, to help you get used to like, how do I just say this stuff? Create a brand statement for yourself. So typically brand statements, to help you kind of like think of how to write it, it'll be like, I do blank to blank, right? So I help blank to do blank. So for myself, to give you an example, I enable leaders to bring their strategic visions to life, right? So this is how I'm helping. This is in what way. This is the audience that I'm targeting, and this is what the end thing looks like. I'm going to pick on Tenny because it's easy in this moment. So for Tenny, I would say her brand statement is, I help skilled newcomers secure meaningful work in Canada. Right? That kind of talks to who is she helping, how is she helping them, what does that look like?
Hello everyone, this is Tenny here. If you're tired of the endless job search, we have a solution for you. Join our community and watch the opportunities come to you. Our talent community is a direct link to top companies eager to find talented professionals just like yourself. We'll help you showcase your skills and connect you with job postings that align with your interests and experience. So check out the caption and sign up to our talent community today to start building your career you deserve in Canada. The opportunities are endless, and we're here to help you make the most of them.
So some tips to think about as you work on this and as you write it: keep it simple, keep it memorable, use language that resonates, try to keep it short, 2 to 3 sentences max. The brand statement should be statement, not a paragraph. The other thing that sounds funny, and like this is where it's good to understand what people absorb and what they just what will resonate. Don't try to be too fancy. And this sounds really funny, and it's not to say dumb down your message, but if your whole sentence is a bunch of words that are all like 3 syllables long, I would not call that memorable, because the person is sitting there just trying to interpret every single word that you just told them, that they might have just remembered, like, I think she said she helped somebody, but I don't remember the rest of it was. And that's not a memorable statement. That's more like, okay, that she's just confusing and she doesn't really understand what she wants to say. So draft it, practice it, and test it. So, once you've got feedback from your friends, go back to those same individuals and say, does this resonate? Does this sound right? Does it make sense? Especially because they know you, so they'll be able to help you and give you that good feedback. So the second one I talked about, so there was clarity and then consistency. So really this is about, are you demonstrating the same brand across all your communication mediums? So that when I say that, I mean in person. Are you as friendly then as you are on virtual? Does your brand statement look differently on LinkedIn versus on your resume versus when you meet someone in person? How is it kind of being translated? How are you delivering that message? Do you show up differently depending on what room you go in? And you'll kind of get a hint of it through the feedback you get from your trusted colleagues and friends, because you want to understand, am I always walking in treating everybody equal, especially if that's important to you? So whether they're the CEO of the company or they're the maintenance person, are you still that same kind person when you interact with them and however you talk to them? Because at the end of the day, inconsistency erodes your brand, right? Because if I talk about Tenny and I say, hey, Ada, like Tenny's great, like she's really thoughtful, she's really great at XYZ, And Ada goes to me, really? That's not my experience. Like, that's horrible, right? That's not the kind of thing you want to leave with, or the kind of discussion that you want to have with people, or have people talk about you in that way. Confidence. So I talked about confidence in terms of it also erodes your brand, because it speaks to the believability of your message. People respond to confidence and it's like, it's more than just how you speak. It's whether the willingness to make eye contact, and recognizing that there's also there could be cultural differences, etc., and understanding what that looks like, and allowing for those things as well. But at the end of the day, if you walk into a room grumpy, sit down with your head back or your shoulders down, that already sends a message of who you are and how you're planning to show up and how they are thinking to start engaging you. So I'm not saying dance into the room singing at the top of your lungs, but it's enter the room mindfully, enter conversations mindfully, have that confidence in place. And it's not always easy. Like, I'm not saying any of these things are easy. And there's tricks to kind of take, especially when you're talking to people. So what I would say, and I know Making the Move also posted something on Instagram, affirmations feel weird, but they are good and they are effective. Because at the end of the day, you're looking at rewiring how you think about yourself and putting more of a positive vibe in sort of and confidence in your own thing. So, and it's not about I'm going to be every day going like, I am smart, I am powerful. No, it's what are those affirmations that resonate with you, that help give you that extra like lift to your day, and that extra belief in what you do, in what you're delivering and what you bring to the table. So I think it's a good practice. I do it myself. Daily affirmations. Like I said, sometimes they're painful, sometimes you laugh at yourself, but at the end of the day, you will feel the benefit of how your brain is rewiring, and you will believe those things that you will be your own cheerleader. The other tips I kind of have is, if you're speaking in the front of the room and maybe you lost your train of thought, this is a great tip I got from a communication expert. Reach for that water. It gives you that pause. You take a little sip and you can gather your thoughts and then continue. Nobody minds you taking a drink of water, and it feels better than just going and shuffling through your nose. The other thing I would say, and it's hopefully some of you have heard of this, the power. If you need to do a power, this is great, especially before an interview. Give yourself that minute and do those power poses. Like, you might feel weird, but at the end of the day, it's about like the energy you're trading in yourself before you step into the room. Something else that I find is great is have a moment, whether you call it meditation or just like breath, break up your day that way, right? So I know, like going into interviews, you might be thinking, you have to switch gears. Allow yourself the space to do that. It does wonders for confidence, because it helps you reset, get rid of the noise, focus in on what is the purpose of what you're trying to achieve, what is the message how do you want to come across? And then my favorite, intention. So we talked a lot about purpose, your own purpose, the purpose of why you would do things, the purpose of how you're stepping into the room. So consider what you're hoping to gain. And I say this, it's not about your ego. It's not about being fake. It's about being strategic and deliberate with how you're investing your time and your effort. So when you're stepping into the room, if you think about that time in that way, it's about how am I being present in this moment? How am I making this a priority in terms of how I need to deliver, how I need to show up, what I need to talk about? It gives you that clarity of and goal, really, about what you're doing in that moment. Also consider your audience. Not everyone is the same. Your brand at its core should be consistent, but it's not to say your delivery of that brand has to look the same every single way. I'm not telling you to be a robot. You're still human, and everyone in the room is human, and it's just a matter of like what makes the most sense in each of those scenarios. So I'm going to give you an example before I go through some different scenarios in terms of attention. A good friend of mine is in a mentoring program. So she had to reluctantly write a bio, right? So this is like next level talent profiles. This is your career story, and this isn't just about your brand statement. And she's like, Jocelyn, can you just read it? Just tell me if it's crap or whatever. So she sent it to me, and I was like, okay, how much of my red pen do you want right now? Like, how real do you want my feedback? And she's like, give it to me, like no holds bar. So I was like, okay, my question is to you is, what is your purpose? What are you hoping to gain from this? Who's the audience? And those are like key questions to ask yourself when you're entering into like delivering anything from a brand perspective in whatever environment you're in. So she said, well, they're going to use this to share with the other participants as well as some of the senior leaders, so they have an understanding of you and like what you're hoping to gain. I was like, okay, I'm going to tell you that you started with your name is and my title is this, and here is everything that I do in my role. That was paragraph 1. Paragraph 2 talked a little bit more about her past experience, her past roles. She also did some quarter stuff. Last line of the second paragraph talked about what she was passionate about, what her skills that she was really good at. Third paragraph talked about her interests. I was like, who are you, or are you your role? And like, if you think about your bio in that way, it changes things. So I could have stepped into this conversation today and said, hello, everybody, I'm Jocelyn Garcia. I'm the Director of Executive Compensation at RBC. I'm accountable for designing and developing compensation for executives across the enterprise. Who cares, right? Like, so what? In this environment, does that matter? Not necessarily, right? So it's sort of, if you're looking to grow and get connections in terms of other careers, are you your role? Is what you do, is the job you currently hold the job you want to have forever? Is that going to speak to every other role that you're looking to gain? Or is it the skills and the interests that you have that you are? And this is where I find people trip up, because it's easy to talk about your role. It's easy to talk about your accomplishments. It's harder to talk about your transferable skills in a way that will resonate with someone else, that they will connect and remember you for other work or other opportunities. So let's talk about these different scenarios. And well, let me add some tips here. Remember, people have a short attention span. I know I am one of those people. I think social media has made me not officially, but really have ADD. Multitasking is the worst thing ever. Don't forget, people tend to remember the first and last thing you share. So it's great to have the meat in the middle, but it's more like recency and effect tends to come into mind. Like the example I shared of my friend, the order of operations can influence your ability to achieve your intentions. So it's not to say she can't talk about her role and her accomplishments, but is that where you should start the conversation? Let's flip it. Talk about those things that you're passionate about, who you are, how you show up, and then talk about your roles so that you can demonstrate those things throughout the roles that you held and the companies that you were at. It's about who you are, not what you do. So with that in mind, let's think of a couple scenarios here. So if you're at a round table with some peers, it's on a project, everything I just said probably won't make sense completely. Because in this case, they kind of know who you are, but what they want to understand is, why should I trust you in my project? Like, they want to understand your capabilities, your experience. They want you to demonstrate credibility so that they know that they can trust X piece of work with you or involve you in that way. So really, you do in those scenarios tend to want to start with, my role is X, this is what I do, and because it's your current company. If you're coming in an environment where you're a speaker, really the intention is like, why should I be listening to you? So you want to lean into like, what are your credentials? What's the experience that you have? You might even go into the schooling that you've, like your diplomas, your whatever credentials that you have. You may focus more on that depending on what the topic is. Something like this, so new people, networking, you're looking for a new job, you're looking for new connections. now your job becomes a little bit less, right? Unless you're staying within your industry and you're just looking to get to the next level of still being X. Now it's like, what do I need to know about you that will make me want to know more? How are you creating a connection with me so that I want to learn more about you, and that I will think of you and you'll remember you? What do you stand for? What are you passionate about? It's about like the curiosity that you display, the interest that you share, the focus in terms of future that you're looking for. You have a good idea of your purpose. You have a good idea of your brand. You've created it into this beautiful statement. You have an understanding of the intentions. Okay, now what? Okay, we talked about narratives. So there's your brand statement, and then there's like the mega thing, what I call like your talent profile, your career story. And learning to tell that story is really, it helps others understand who you are, what you value, why they should engage you. I think of it as a marriage of your brand, your experience and accomplishments, as well as your future aspirations. If you've ever seen the talent profile, it tends to be, here are the skills that I'm really good at, but it also looks at, here's the experience that I have that demonstrates a lot of those skills, but here are the types of roles that I'm looking to gain. And it's really that extra piece there that helps people understand, how can I help you? Because they're also looking to make connections, and especially if it's those folks that you're meeting with to kind of get that next job or get a connection to that next job, they're really looking to dig in and to understand, like, well, what do you do? What are you hoping for? Where are you looking to go? And the more you can fill in those blanks for them, the easier it is for them to make those crucial connections, not just any connections, but those crucial and strategic connections for you. Sometimes it helps look across those roles, like really study the roles that you've held. Like I said, for me, if I told you all the roles I held, you'd be like, well, how did you get that? So I was a compensation analyst to a senior consultant in compensation. I was a change management consultant to now a director in executive compensation. I also had operations at one point. Like, it's really hard just from titles to see, like, well, what was the common thread that you pulled there? But at the end of the day, like I said, 3 things came from my roles. It's understanding people, understanding priorities, and translating those 2 things to a strategy that delivers desired results. So whether I was in compensation and building those relationships, whether I was in change management, whether I was in an agile environment, at the end of the day, all those 3 things held true, and the skills I needed, I built on and worked on from there. So yeah, like I said, brand, it's not just about where you are, it's where you're looking to grow. If you only think about where you are, you're going to stay there, right? So it's always trying to add in that future forward look to it. If you understand these things, so guys, put in the work. I know it's going to be not fun, but at the end of the day, like, remember what your goals are. But if you understand these things, you can make better decisions, and it'll enable you to connect with those, and enables those you connect with to understand how they can support you. And I can't stress this more, because I've had people that reported to me. I said, okay, well, how can I help you move to your next role? What is it you're looking for? I just want to make an impact. I don't know what role that's like, that's hard to connect you to something. It sounds great, and I believe it too. That's something that's my purpose as well. But it's like, I need something a little bit more tangible. So it's getting those ideas and clarity for others, so that in these connections that you're doing, at the end of the day, you're advertising and advocating for yourself, so that you can get to that next thing and aspire to it. So like I said, the multi-purpose pitch. So I said there's different scenarios. I also think there's different ways to think about it. Like I said, at a round table, usually you get like 10 to 30 seconds to introduce yourself. So figure out what your narrative needs to look like in that moment, in that like 10 to 30 seconds. Then I also like to think of it as like an elevator ride. So you meet someone that's going to make a difference in your career. You only have one floor to get them interested. What is your snapshot that you want to share with them? What is your elevator pitch? This could be that 30 seconds. How do you get their attention so they want to have a meeting with you, so you can elaborate on it? Sometimes you're lucky, you get a couple floors. So now you have 60 seconds. How do you go from a snapshot to like, here's the highlight reel of why I'm amazing? Think of it like speed networking or speed dating, same kind of concept. What are those key highlights you want to share with someone so that they remember you and they want to learn more? Now, the last one is the fun one. So this is where you could kind of go with that elaborate talent profile and career story. A meeting or an interview, you got the date, you have their undivided attention. How are you going to use it to tell your story, to share your aspirations, to show what you bring and how you would fit into their group and make an amazing addition? So that's how I kind of look at it from a multi-purpose pitch. So it's great to know it, but your brand, it's great to have an understanding your narrative, but you also need to understand how to then craft it for different scenarios and practice that pitch so that everyone, one, they believe what you're saying, and the more you say it, the more confidence you can demonstrate it. And if you're really lucky, people will iterate everything you say in the exact same way you say it, which is always amazing. Any questions?
Yeah. So I kept smiling because in relation to my LinkedIn profile, I have been trying to figure out a statement for my profile, and because I've seen other persons on LinkedIn, because I'm just playing around with it and getting to understand how it works and everything, I see persons with like long paragraphs of, like their history in terms of their careers and stuff. And so a lot of what you said, I figure it might be different for LinkedIn because LinkedIn is more professional based and all of that. So the fact that you came and you said that, listen, having something that, simple and short helps. But I also want to know, would you consider LinkedIn, having a brand on LinkedIn, even though it's professional, having something short, as you just described, versus having something that's long-winded? How best to put a statement about yourself on a platform like LinkedIn?
Yeah, for sure. So I find, so for myself, and I've probably changed it 3 times this year in terms of refining what I have on my own LinkedIn profile. One thing that I really liked, and I can't take credit for this because I totally adopted a colleague's LinkedIn approach. When you go on LinkedIn, your profile shows your name and then it shows your title. How important is it for you to have your title there? And I only ask that because for me, I was like, you need my title, go check out my resume, career history stuff, right? Like, you got it there. What I want to show is, I want you to see, like, what are the 3 skills that I'm really good at and known for. So mine says, and forgive me if I get it completely wrong because I changed it recently, transformation strategist, integrator, talent enabler. Those are my 3. And I just have it, instead of a title, I have it there. So that's my quick brand sort of stamp. Within my bio or the profile that you can write, I think you can be as sort of like verbose as you desire there, but it's, again, like, what is the intention? Really, you're looking to share who you are as well as grab their attention so that they will reach out to you and want to learn more. So it's different for everybody. And again, it kind of speaks to what makes sense for you. I find short is better. And it's not to say 2 to 3 sentences. I think like 2 to 3 short paragraphs. Once it starts to be like a double scroll on the page, like, that's a lot, right? So, and I only say that because, again, people don't really have that huge attention span. And I say this, like, think about it as if it was an Instagram post. How many of those things have you seen that, like, as interesting as it was for you, you're like, could you have written less? Like, I could have got the point in maybe like 3 less sentences than what you did. And kind of test it with yourself, because it's like, I always find I'm my worst critic, but sometimes it works in my favor. Because if I wrote it about myself and I don't even have the attention span to read my own bio, then it's probably too long, right? And I would test it with some friends, because it would say, like, if you say to them, hey, this is what I want to come on my bio and my LinkedIn profile so that it reflects me professionally, did these 3 things come across? And if they can say yes to you, then it's probably the right way. If it's not coming across, either it could be the message isn't long enough or the message isn't clear enough.
That's right. Jocelyn, you have a question in the chat box. How do you separate your personal and professional brand? Is it even possible?
Are we talking Instagram versus LinkedIn? That's a great question. I guess the question I would have for you is, like, how much do you separate your personal life and your professional life? How much do your friends kind of like bleed in from one to the other? I think you could have similar brands at its core, but it might just show up differently. Like, I would say I am probably more goofy and like weird with my family and friends than I would ever be professionally, but that's a deliberate choice, right? So I don't think you have to fully separate it. I think you have to figure out what is true for both, regardless of which one. Because I would find it hard to believe that anyone in this group that said they are thoughtful are only thoughtful professionally and not personally, or vice versa, right? You likely are just thoughtful in general. Friendly is different, because I'm probably friendlier non-professionally than professionally. but yeah, like I think it is possible. I think it just takes effort and thought in terms of, what does this up? Does it need to? Is it really that hard a line in terms of what the separation is, and why do you need a separation? So not so much an answer as much as more questions for you to think about.
And I think the exercise that you mentioned, Jocelyn, like your friends analyzing you would help. Like, what are the things that your friends would suggest you don't show up professionally? Mm-hmm. Like, you don't keep that at home.
For sure. So just some like last minute tips. I kind of alluded to this. Google is like, don't hate on Google. Do your research, future-proof your skills, understand what the market trends are around skills themselves. I've seen many posts on Instagram or other places on the internet where it just talks about, like, here are the key skills people are looking at. Does it highlight some that you're looking to demonstrate? That's a great thing if they are. And if none of them are on your list, okay, that's something to think about. Like, how do you start showing up in terms of demonstrating those things? Similar to what Melissa was saying too, check out profiles of people you admire. Take note of what's memorable of what they've done. What can you learn from them? It's not about copying, but it's trying to, like, okay, what resonates with what they've done? How can you translate that into what you want to show and how you want to speak about yourself? To just get started. Like, don't overthink this, because if you overthink, you won't start. Just start jotting stuff down on paper. Practice your delivery so it becomes second nature for you. Refine your message, especially when things don't land. And not landing could just be, again, it could be the crafting it could be the clarity around it. Evolve as your focus or aspirations change. This is not a once and done. The brand you have today might not be the brand you want tomorrow, right? Or it might not even be the brand that you want to keep 5 years from now. People are meant to be stagnant. Your brands are not meant to be stagnant. It should grow and evolve with you. And the third, which is like one of my favorite things too, seek advice from others. No one knows everything, right? So I would say avail yourself of the resources that are available online. MTM offers some great ones. They have resources and templates. They have coaches that you can link with that will help you build your brand, as well as other offerings they have to help you. I have a couple like plugs of books, which I have no endorsements of. Brene Brown, Dare Lead, amazing book. They also talk about, she talks about vulnerability, which I think is very important. She talks about leadership. She has a lot of things in terms of skills and things to think about, which will help you in terms of helping define that brand for yourself. For my fellow introverts, there's this book called Captivate by Vanessa Van Edwards. She did a lot of work in terms of introversion and people behaviors. So she gives some great tips around networking, how to kind of make yourself memorable, not only in delivery, but even just sometimes visual cues, which are cool. I've talked a lot a bit about, or not a little, a lot a bit about, totally contradictory statement, but storytelling, stories that stick. So Kindra Hall talks about storytelling, the power of storytelling, and gives you tips on that. So that would be another book I recommend. I'm sure there's others.
Hi, Jocelyn. Sorry I was late to the party. But I
No
was
worries.
going, yes, I was gonna ask, do you think that at any point your brand in code can change, or, you know, your values can change? And how does that affect your brand, you know, your overall brand in the long run?
Yeah, like, so I said, like, you're not meant to be stagnant. So the brand that I probably had early in my career, which probably, like, let's be honest, think too hard on it, I probably didn't even know what a brand was in that moment, was probably leading more around curiosity and openness, and honestly being willing to do any work, because hello, I was like new in career and just wanted a paycheck. Right? My brand today is very far from what it was in the past, right? So for it to change. I think where you might want to like be careful is, are you doing a complete like drastic shift from anything anyone knows you to be? And that might not be a bad thing, especially if it's a brand that you're trying to shake. I have a lot of like, I have a love-hate with HR because, and this would be true, Tim's gonna laugh at me. This could be true anywhere, so don't take my comment too harshly, but brand in HR can sink you like crazy because it's such a small community. Your desired brand or your demonstrated brand, it's like the perceived brand that ends at the end of the day lands. And if it's not one that you actually want, it becomes an uphill battle to challenge it, right? But it becomes more of like, how do I now counter what people think I am and people think that I do? So I think it kind of runs in the same idea of what you're talking about. It's, if I was always showing myself to be willing to say yes to everything, and now I want to demonstrate that I need boundaries and I need to say no, is that going to be seen as a huge shift? Is it going to get negatively? It could be, I think, if you aren't deliberate about how you tackle it, right? So I think if you went into that and it's more, I'm not saying no to everything or yes to everything, because of the fact that I need to make sure that the things that I'm working on will succeed, and that I'm prioritizing in the right way. And there's, I'm sure, better ways to word that. But I think it's like understanding what that shift needs to look like and what's the explanation of the shift that you can provide, so that people can kind of get on board with it and then move on and just live with your new brand.
Thanks, Jocelyn.
I think
I see a question from Juliet. So if you're early in your career, how do you communicate the brand you want for yourself without the skills to support it, without being pretentious? That's a great question. So I think it depends on what are you hoping your brand to be, right? So are you stepping in going like, I'm a human-centered leader, like well-versed in all things business agility? I would be like, dude, put your books down and let's talk reality versus theory. So I totally get it. But is there things in there that make sense to resonate that could then help them understand that you would be effective in a, say, startup environment? Because I know someone was talking about startup. So it's, I can work quickly, I can adapt and I can learn. I am a critical thinker, I can do problem solving. I don't think anyone would discredit those things, because you do demonstrate those things in school. You do demonstrate those things in life, right? It's also challenging what people are looking at when are they limiting life to only what shows up in your day-to-day work environment, or are they open to talking about all the skills that you demonstrate just in your day-to-day? And I say that because and I'm gonna applaud mothers here for a second. There are a lot of moms that become like working mother, like, or full-time moms, which they're always full-time moms, but they're not in the work environment. But does that mean that you discredit the skills that they would have gained, say even on the mat leave? No, it's like they had to prioritize with sleep deprivation. They had to run a household. They had to manage expenses. They had to negotiate with little tyrants, really, if you think about it. Like, there's all those skills that are still transferable to work, but people only want to think about projects. And it's just challenging and broadening people's thought process in terms of, my experience doesn't only happen because I worked on implementing X thing.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. I took a lot. I hope we're all able to write down one thing or the other. Very, very, very impactful.
Like I said, I'm really happy to share sort of what I've learned and experienced over time. I'm still learning. The same advice I'm giving you, I'm telling myself to follow. So I appreciate your participation and your vulnerability and your candor today. And if you have any other questions after this, like, honestly, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn and we can connect offline. Offline, such a weird thing, but we can connect and continue the discussion. Even if you just want to, like, quick question, whatever it is, feel free to reach out.
From sessions like this, as you start your new role or as you're looking to evolve, please let's use these tips as we advance in our careers. I definitely am using the tips that I've gotten from my mentors and leaders like Jocelyn as I started in my new role. I'm a very jokey person, but I try to not be as jokey so that they don't not take me seriously. So that's one thing that I had to take when I was leaving RBC, like, stop joking. So anyway, so please, as you start your new role, you've gotten your jobs, we want you to thrive and excel in everything that you lay your hands upon, and it to be nothing but upward from there. So that's our prayer for you. Awesome. So thank you, Jocelyn, once again. Cannot thank you enough.
Thank you.
We'll have you back for Excel training soon.
That's funny, Tenny.
Joining
For Excel training. All right, everyone.